In 1968, the Pontiac GTO introduced a revolutionary bumper to the car world. It incorporated a specially formed closed-cell urethane foam that was bonded to a steel frame. What made this bumper revolutionary was that it was thought of and touted as being indestructible, as witnessed in a Pontiac GTO commercial where a man strikes an Endura bumper with a sledgehammer, which left no damage at all. At a time where most bumpers were chrome, the Endura bumper was the same color as the car and sat flush with the fenders with matching shape and contours, as opposed to a chrome bumper where it appears to have the look of something added to the design. The GTO was revolutionary in making bumpers look like and blend in with the rest of the car, which is commonplace amongst modern vehicles in this day. In 1968, the Pontiac GTO was selected as Motor Trend's Car of the Year, and some believe the Endura bumper partially contributed to that. By the early 1970s, Endura bumpers were featured on Firebirds, Trans Ams, Camaros, Le Manses, and even on Barracudas and Challengers, relabeled as the Elastomeric bumper. So on this day, it's my honor to say, we're fixing an Endura bumper today. Here we have a 1969 front bumper for a GTO. It's made out of a rubber called Endura. These cracks right here, they all need to be grooved out and filled. I don't know how far I'm gonna go with all these little superficial cracks, but I'm definitely gonna groove out ones like this, like that, like this. I'll actually take that off, groove that out, groove this out. So we got most of it stripped. We still have a couple corners here and there, but we'll address that by hand. I could go ahead and start doing some repairs. And this is so overwhelming with cracks. I'm going to go ahead and categorize the cracks. These ones right here, I'm going to really V out very good and fix them accordingly. This would be in that category. So with this, this would fall in the other category, where I'm just going to take a die grinder and grind a nice bed in there, all along here, right there, right there, right there. We're ready to get to the next phase. Everything I grooved out, which would appear to be a deep gouge, is going to get plastic repair. Everywhere else, where you have these little cracks like this, that's going to get a flexible polyester putty. Getting pretty close to finishing this up. When I'm sanding along, I'll start with the 120, and as soon as an edge pokes up like this, I'll take it to 150, because I don't want the rubber to ball up all over. And if I don't do that, this little edge right here will be too rough, and as soon as you prime it, you'll be able to see the roughness. You'll see the rubber balling up. Even flexible filler cracks, and this cracks because if you look at the shape, it goes out. So when you press it against the fender, it pushes it up. So I gotta shave this back to match the contour of the fender edge, and in doing that, it'll probably suck this gap in a little more. And this one's good enough so far. We'll see how it looks like when we bolt it up. This one, we just bent the bottom of the fender outwards while pushing down right here, and that helped it out a little bit. Now, above this scribe line, I'm going to throw a couple tacks in there, and that's going to close off that gap right there. There's a little gap right here, and I don't like it. I found it a pain in the butt to try to feed a bolt through the fender while holding up this bumper at the right height to feed a bolt through there and thread it in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a stud from the back side and have it stick out like this, so I could line it up to the fender and just throw a nut right on the end of the stud. I'm going to fill these holes with plastic repair, and I'm also going to build up these edges just a hair with plastic repair so it matches with the fender. And both sides have them. You know, I got them adjusted really well everywhere, but there's a little discrepancy on the corner of each one. done with the Endura bumper, and I gotta admit, there's a lot of things I'll do differently next time.
Let's start off by loosening the bumper bracket bolts going to the top of the bumper and also the bolts that attaches the bumper bracket to the frame horns. Next, you want to loosen up the bolts on the side of the bumper that attaches to the fender and support. After all these bolts are loosened, the bumper is able to be moved freely into position and at the correct angle and height. And this is easily done by having a helper holding up the bumper up to the fender while you tighten up the bolts. The front frame horn bolt has a slotted opening and allows the bumper to move up and down, and this is the bolt you tighten up first as your helper is holding up the bumper. The rear frame horn bolt also has a slotted opening and allows the bumper to move front to back. This is the second bolt you'll tighten up. Once those bolts are tightened up, you should be closely aligned with your fender contours and height. The next bolts you'll tighten up are the bolts to your fenders and core support, and these are the bolts that will help you hold the side-to-side movement to get the fender sides to line up with the sides of the bumper. Line it up the best you can and tighten up the bolts. If when tightening any of these bolts causes the Endura rubber to bunch up against the mated areas, stick 80 grit sandpaper in between the fender and bumper and sand the Endura rubber till it stops bunching up and lays even. Last, you tighten the bolts that connect the top of the bumper to the bumper bracket. On the Endura bumper I did, the shape of the fender didn't match the shape of the bumper. I fixed that by cutting a slice right under the peak of the fender in the jamb and re-welded it back on while someone pushed down on the peak of the fender. This worked extremely well, but the peak of the bumper was still a tad lower than the peak of the fender. So I ran tape on the fender edge and built the peak up on the bumper with 2-part plastic repair after applying adhesion promoter to the repair area. Then I sanded it down and used the fender as a guide. Once I got it lined up the best of my ability, I can then sand off some rubber here and there on the Endura bumper so the fenders and bumpers are flush. And this will also eliminate tiny cracks in the rubber by completely sanding them out. Once it's lined up with the fenders, let's focus on getting the hood to bumper gap right. If your hood to bumper gap is too small, you can push the hood towards the rear of the car and lose your nice rear hood to fender top gap, or you can get a long block with 80 grit and sand the Endura rubber away to give you a bigger hood to bumper gap. I prefer this way because the rear edge of the Endura bumper has thin rubber that hangs off to the side of the steel frame that's under the rubber, so if someone's looking into the hood and places their hands on your bumper, the amount of flex the bumper sees in the rear area is immense. Sanding this edge off makes the top rear edge stronger and stiffer, which is a good thing in terms of longevity of the repair. This is also another reason why I'd prefer to skim the entire top of the bumper with plastic repair, because in general, the whole top of the bumper is just asking to be flexing all over the place, and it'll most likely be some idiot's hand. Your hand. If your hood to bumper gap is too big, you can either push the hood forward a tad and lose your